I got pregnant with twins for a millionaire with no heirs and found true love after one night together. The marble foyer of the Morales estate echoed with 4 years of silence about to shatter into a million pieces. Dorothy stood there in her navy suit, 2 small hands gripping hers, watching Ryan Morales turn from the window and freeze like he had seen a ghost. His eyes moved from her face to the children flanking her, then back to her face, then back to the children. The calculations happening behind those dark eyes were 4 years too late. Dorothy. His voice cracked on her name. What is this? She did not soften it. There was no point in softening something that would cut either way. I got pregnant that night. These are your sons, Gabriel and Lucas. They are 4 years old. They have your eyes. The color drained from his face so completely that Dorothy thought he might collapse right there on the imported Italian marble his father had been so proud of. I have children. The words came out strangled. For 4 years I have had children, and you never told me. You left. 7 words on hotel stationery. A trip to Singapore without looking back. What exactly was I supposed to do? Call your office and leave a message that the one-night stand you abandoned was pregnant with twins. Gabriel stepped forward then, positioning himself between Dorothy and this stranger who was apparently his father. His dark eyes, so identical to Ryan's that it hurt to look at them, narrowed with protective suspicion. Do not yell at my mama. Ryan looked at his son, really looked, and something in his face crumbled into pieces that would take years to reassemble. I am not yelling at her. I am angry at myself. I am angry at 4 years of not knowing you existed. I am angry at everything I missed and cannot get back. Lucas, never one to let tension last longer than necessary, tugged on Dorothy's hand. Mama, is he really our daddy? Yes, baby, he is. Lucas considered this with the seriousness only a 4-year-old can muster. Do you like dragons? Ryan blinked at the sudden shift. First, I am sure I could learn to like dragons. Good. Mama says you have to like what we like if you want to be our friend. Then I will like dragons more than anyone has ever liked dragons. And just like that, in the foyer of a dead man's estate, surrounded by the weight of secrets and inheritance and 4 years of choices that could not be unmade, something shifted. Not forgiveness. That would take much longer, but possibility. The first crack in walls that had seemed permanent. Have you ever had a moment that split your life into before and after? A single night that changed everything you thought you knew about yourself, about love, about what you were capable of surviving. Dorothy Vale had that moment. And this is her story. But to understand how she ended up in that marble foyer with 2 children and a heart she had rebuilt from rubble, we need to go back. Back to a charity gala at the Belmont Hotel. Back to a woman who was invisible to the world of wealth she served. Back to one night that was supposed to mean nothing and ended up meaning everything. 4 years before that confrontation, Dorothy Vale was 28 years old and drowning. Not in water, in debt, in exhaustion, in the slow suffocation of watching her grandmother die while working 3 jobs that still were not enough to cover the medical bills piling up like accusations on her kitchen counter. $127,000. That was the number that followed her everywhere. That whispered to her while she tried to sleep. That made her calculate every purchase down to the penny and still come up short. The Belmont Hotel fundraiser was supposed to be just another shift. Serve champagne to people who spent more on their watches than Dorothy made in a year. Smile like she was not exhausted. Disappear into the background because that was what staff did. They became invisible so the wealthy could pretend their luxury appeared by magic. She had been coordinating events at the Belmont for 2 years. It was better than waitressing, slightly better than retail, nowhere near enough to make a dent in her grandmother's hospice bills. But it was work, and work was survival, and survival was all she had the energy to focus on. The gala was for some children's charity Dorothy could not remember the name of. The irony was not lost on her. Wealthy people gathering to feel good about helping poor children, while the woman serving their drinks could not afford to see a doctor herself. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling glasses, directing caterers, solving problems before they became visible to the guests. That was her job. Invisible problem solving for people who would never know her name. It was nearly 11 when she made the mistake that changed everything. Someone had left a glass of champagne on a service table. Dorothy, exhausted, dehydrated, not thinking clearly, picked it up and drank without checking. She thought it was the sparkling water she had been sipping all night to stay functional. The bubbles hit different. The warmth spread through her empty stomach. By the time she realized it was champagne, she had already finished the glass. She was not drunk. One glass of champagne on an empty stomach did not make a person drunk, but it made her walls thinner, made the exhaustion harder to hide, made the tears that had been threatening all week suddenly impossible to hold back. She found the service corridor behind the main ballroom, the one with the ugly fluorescent lighting and the industrial carpet, and the complete absence of anyone who mattered. She leaned against the wall and let herself cry. It was supposed to be private. It was supposed to be a 5-minute breakdown she could clean up and move past. It was supposed to be invisible, like everything else about her life. Then the door opened. Dorothy straightened immediately, swiping at her face, ready to apologize for being out of position. But the man who walked through was not hotel staff. He was a guest. She could tell by the suit that probably cost more than her car. She opened her mouth to apologize, to excuse herself, to become invisible again. He did not give her the chance. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a silk pocket square, and held it out to her without a word. She stared at it. At him. At the absurdity of a man in a $10,000 suit offering her something to wipe her tears with. I cannot take that. It probably costs more than my rent. It is a piece of fabric, and you need it more than my pocket does. His voice was not what she expected. Not cold or dismissive or performatively kind. Just present, like he was actually seeing her instead of looking through her. She took the pocket square because refusing felt like more effort than she had left. Do you want to talk about it? He asked. Or do you want me to leave you alone? I want to not exist for about 10 minutes. He nodded like this was a perfectly reasonable request. Then he sat down, right there on the industrial carpet of the service corridor, in his $10,000 suit, like it was nothing. What are you doing? Waiting with you while you do not exist. Unless you would rather be alone. Dorothy should have told him to leave, should have remembered her position, her invisibility, the rules that governed interactions between staff and guests. But she was tired, so tired, and he was offering something she had not had in months, company that expected nothing from her. She sat down beside him on the ugly carpet. They did not speak for several minutes. Dorothy focused on breathing, on getting her tears under control, on remembering that tomorrow she would wake up and do all of this again. Finally, he broke the silence. I am Ryan. Dorothy. What is making you not exist tonight, Dorothy? The question should have felt intrusive. It did not. My grandmother is dying. I am $127,000 in debt from her care. I work 3 jobs and I still cannot afford my own apartment. I eat 1 meal a day to save money for her medication. And I just realized I have been holding on so tight for so long that I do not remember what it feels like to let go. The words spilled out before she could stop them. She blamed the champagne, the exhaustion, the simple fact that he had asked like he actually wanted to know. Ryan did not offer platitudes or solutions, or the empty comfort of people who have never struggled. He just listened. I just came from my father's house. He said, my father is dying too. Lung cancer. He spent the entire visit telling me what a disappointment I am, because my 3rd marriage ended last month without producing the heirs he has been demanding since I was 18. 3rd marriage. Ryan's laugh was bitter. I have been married 3 times because my father thinks legacy means bloodline. Every time a marriage failed to produce children, I felt more like a breeding program failure than a human being. That is awful. It is the life I was raised for. Moralist men build empires and produce heirs. Everything else is secondary. He paused. I do not know why I'm telling you this. I do not tell anyone this. Maybe because I do not matter. Dorothy said it without self-pity. Just fact. I am staff. I am invisible. Tomorrow you will not remember my name. I do not think I could forget you if I tried. Something shifted in the air between them. Dorothy felt it, that dangerous electricity that happened when 2 lonely people found unexpected shelter in each other. She should have stood up. Should have returned to the gala. Should have remembered all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she told him about her grandmother, about the English degree she had abandoned when her parents died in a car accident when she was 22, about the dreams of becoming a writer that had gotten buried under medical bills and survival, about the loneliness of being the only person left in her family who could remember what her grandmother's laugh used to sound like. Ryan told her about growing up in a mausoleum of a mansion, about a mother who left when he was 7, about a father who measured love in quarterly reports and air production, about feeling like a machine his entire life, programmed to perform rather than live, about the relief and guilt that came from hoping his father would die soon so the demands would finally stop. They talked for 2 hours, sitting on ugly carpet in a service corridor, finding something real in the most unlikely place. It was past 1 in the morning when Dorothy finally stood. I should go. I should have gone hours ago. Ryan stood too. He was tall. She had not noticed before because she had been too busy not existing. Do you want to get out of here? He asked. It was the question that would split her life in two. Before and after. Everything and nothing. She knew what she should say. She knew the rules, the risks, the reasons this was exactly the kind of fairy tale that did not happen to women like her. But his eyes were so tired. And hers were so tired. And for one night, just one night, she wanted to feel like a human being instead of a ghost serving champagne to people who would never see her. Yes, the suite was on the 47th floor. Dorothy did not ask how he could afford it because the answer was obvious. Everything about him said money, old money, the kind of wealth that did not need to announce itself. But inside those expensive walls, they were just two broken people looking for shelter. I should not be here, Dorothy said, standing by the window, looking at a city that had never felt like home. Probably not, Ryan agreed, moving to stand beside her. But I am glad you are. He did not touch her, did not assume, just stood beside her, giving her space to choose. Dorothy had not chosen anything for herself in so long. Every decision for years had been about survival, about her grandmother, about keeping her head above water long enough to take another breath. For one night, she wanted to choose something that was only about her. She turned and kissed him. It was not the desperate collision of lonely bodies. It was softer than that, slower, like they both understood that what was happening was fragile and temporary and worth treating carefully. Ryan kissed her back like she was something precious, his hands in her hair, on her waist, treating her like she mattered. When did she stop mattering? When did she become so invisible that a stranger's attention felt like coming back to life? They made their way to the bedroom through a series of choices. Every step, a question. Every pause, an opportunity to stop. Neither of them stopped. What happened next was private in a way Dorothy would protect fiercely in the years to come. Not because it was shameful, but because it was sacred. Because for one night, in one anonymous hotel room, she was seen completely by someone who had no reason to see her. They fell asleep, tangled together, and Dorothy felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Foolish, dangerous hope that maybe this meant something. That maybe she had stumbled into one of those stories where the struggling girl meets someone who changes everything. That maybe tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow was different. But not in the way she hoped. She woke alone. The space beside her was cold. She sat up, disoriented, looking for evidence that last night had been real. A note on the pillow. Hotel stationery. Handwritten. I wish circumstances were different. 7 words, no explanation, no phone number, no last name. Just I wish circumstances were different, like that meant anything at all. Dorothy sat in those expensive sheets and felt something inside her crack. Not break entirely, but crack, the way ice does at the end of winter when it is starting to give way. She found out from the hotel front desk that Mr. Morales had checked out early that morning. A car had taken him to the airport. He was on his way to Singapore for a business merger that would take at least a year. He had not asked for her contact information, had not left any for her, had simply vanished, leaving behind nothing but 7 words and the faint smell of his cologne on the pillow she had slept on. Dorothy walked home in last night's clothes. She passed a park where a father was pushing his daughter on the swings. The child's laughter cut through the morning air like something Dorothy had lost and could not name. It was just one night, she told herself. Wealthy men do not choose struggling event coordinators. This is not a fairy tale. This is your life, and your life does not include happy endings. She believed it, truly believed it. For exactly 6 weeks. 6 weeks after the night that was supposed to mean nothing, Dorothy was late. Not late for work. Her cycle. She was never late. Even during the worst stress of her grandmother's illness, her body had kept to its schedule like clockwork. She tried to ignore it for 3 days. Told herself it was stress, exhaustion, the emotional toll of everything she had been carrying. But by day 4, the denial was not working anymore. She bought 3 pregnancy tests from a pharmacy 20 minutes from her apartment because she could not bear the thought of someone she knew seeing her make this purchase. 3 tests, 3 identical results, 3 pink lines that rewrote her entire future. The doctor confirmed it a week later. "Miss Vale, you are approximately 8 weeks pregnant." 8 weeks. The math was not complicated. There had only been one night. One man. One set of circumstances she had been trying to forget. The ultrasound revealed something else. The technician moved the wand and paused, her brow furrowing in a way that made Dorothy's heart stop. "Is something wrong?" "No." The technician smiled. "Something unexpected, though. You see these 2 shapes here?" Dorothy looked at the screen and saw 2 tiny beings pulsing with life. "Congratulations. You are having twins." The world tilted. Dorothy gripped the exam table and tried to remember how to breathe. Twins. No insurance. $127,000 in debt. A 1-bedroom apartment she could barely afford. 3 jobs that together did not add up to stability. And somewhere on the other side of the world, a man who did not know she existed anymore. She laughed, then cried, then sat in silence while the technician printed photos of the 2 lives growing inside her. That night, Dorothy sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and typed the name she had been avoiding. Ryan Morales. The search results loaded, and the reality of what she was dealing with hit her like a physical blow. Ryan Morales, heir to Morales Industries, a $4.2 billion real estate empire spanning 3 continents, son of Ricardo Morales, patriarch and founder, known for his obsession with legacy and family bloodline. She clicked through article after article. Photos of Ryan at charity galas, always with a different woman on his arm. Headlines about his divorces. Speculation about his fertility after 3 marriages failed to produce children. Ricardo Morales demands heirs. One gossip column crowed. 3 daughters-in-law have failed to deliver. Is the Morales legacy doomed? Dorothy read about Ryan's father and felt sick. Ricardo Morales treated women like breeding vessels, valued only for their ability to produce the next generation of Morales empire builders. 3 women had married into that family and been discarded when they could not perform the single function Ricardo valued. She imagined herself in that world. Imagined showing up pregnant at the Morales mansion, announcing that she was carrying the heirs Ricardo had demanded for decades. Imagined being absorbed into that machine, her children becoming assets rather than humans, their worth measured in their ability to carry forward a legacy she wanted no part of. She imagined Ryan, who had spoken so bitterly about his father's demands, being forced to acknowledge a one-night stand as the mother of his children. The scandal, the lawyers, the custody battles that would inevitably follow, and she imagined her babies, caught in the middle of all of it, pulled between worlds, growing up as heirs first and children second. No, the word came from somewhere deep inside her, from the part of her that had survived orphanhood and debt and exhaustion and every other thing life had thrown at her. No, she would not let her children become pawns in a legacy game. She would not let them grow up in a world where their worth was measured by their bloodline rather than their hearts. She would not let them know a grandfather who treated their existence as a victory rather than a blessing. She closed the laptop. She would not tell him, not out of spite, not out of anger, out of protection, out of the fierce, primal need to keep her children safe from a world that would use them before they were old enough to understand. She would build something herself. Something stable and safe and free from the demands of a dying patriarch who saw children as property. It was the hardest decision she had ever made, and in some quiet moments, in the years that followed, she would wonder if it was the right one. But on that night, alone in her apartment with 2 lives growing inside her, it was the only decision she could make. 2 weeks after she made her choice, Dorothy's grandmother died. She held her hand at the end, watched the monitors flatline, felt the moment her last family connection severed. There was nothing left to hold her in Miami. No family, no ties, nothing but debt and memories and a city that had never felt like home. She called her Aunt Patricia that night. Patricia was not really her aunt. She was her grandmother's best friend, a woman who had been part of Dorothy's life since childhood, who lived in a small house in the mountains outside Asheville, and had never once asked Dorothy for anything except her happiness. Aunt Patricia. "It is Dorothy, sweetheart." The voice on the other end was warm and immediate. "How are you holding up? I am pregnant. It is complicated, and I need a place to start over." Patricia did not ask questions, did not demand explanations, did not offer judgment or advice. "Come home," she said simply. "There is always room for you here." Dorothy sold everything she owned except what fit in 2 suitcases. She paid off what she could of her grandmother's bills and negotiated payment plans for the rest. She gave notice at all 3 jobs. She said goodbye to an apartment that had never felt like anything but temporary. The bus to Asheville took 18 hours. Dorothy watched Miami disappear through the rear window and felt something that might have been relief. She talked to her belly during the long stretches of highway, narrated the scenery even though the babies were too small to hear anything yet. "Those are the Appalachian Mountains. We're going somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, somewhere no one will find us unless we want to be found. I do not know how any of this is going to work yet, but I promise you we are going to be okay. I do not know how, but we are going to be okay." The mountains appeared at dawn on the 2nd day, green and ancient and completely indifferent to the struggles of humans. There was something comforting about their permanence. The world kept spinning, mountains stayed mountains, and somewhere in those mountains there was a woman who had said come home without hesitation. Patricia's house was small and wooden and surrounded by forest, a garden in the front yard, a chicken coop in the back, the kind of place Dorothy had dreamed about as a child, before life taught her that dreams were luxuries she could not afford. Patricia was waiting on the porch, 62 years old, silver-haired, wearing overalls, and a t-shirt that said, "I am not bossy, I just have better ideas." She took one look at Dorothy's face and opened her arms. Dorothy fell into them and cried harder than she had cried since her parents died. 6 years of holding on, of being strong, of surviving alone, all of it poured out onto Patricia's shoulder. "You do not have to explain anything you are not ready to explain," Patricia said, stroking her hair. "You are home now. Everything else can wait." Everything else waited for 3 weeks. Dorothy slept, ate real food for the first time in months, let Patricia fuss over her like she was a child again. Let the mountains and the quiet and the complete absence of sirens and traffic and the constant noise of survival work their slow magic. When she finally told Patricia the full story, the older woman listened without interruption. "So," Patricia said when Dorothy finished, "you are having twins. The father is a billionaire who does not know they exist, and you have decided to raise them alone because you do not trust his world not to destroy them. That is the summary, yes?" Patricia nodded slowly. "And what do you need from me?" "A place to stay while I figure out what comes next. Work I can do remotely because at some point I will not be able to work outside the house. And someone to tell me I am not completely insane for thinking I can do this." "You are not completely insane," Patricia said immediately. "You are one of the strongest people I know. You watched your parents die and rebuilt yourself. You watched your grandmother die and kept going. You are going to watch these babies be born and you are going to give them a life worth living. I have no doubt about any of that. What if I cannot do it? Then I will be here to help." "But Dorothy," Patricia took her hands, "you can do it. You are going to do it. And those babies are going to grow up knowing they were wanted and loved and raised by a woman who chose them over everything else in the world." Dorothy started crying again. She seemed to do a lot of that now. The pregnancy hormones or the relief or some combination that made her eyes leak at the slightest provocation. "Thank you. Do not thank me," Patricia said briskly, standing. "Thank me by resting up. Those babies are going to need a mother who is not running on empty. Speaking of which, when did you last eat?" "A few hours ago." "That is unacceptable. Come on. I am making you a proper meal." Dorothy followed her into the kitchen and felt something she had almost forgotten existed. Safety. The months that followed were a blur of building. Dorothy found remote work editing manuscripts. Her English degree, which had felt useless for years, suddenly became an asset. Authors needed editors who could work on their own schedules, who could deliver quality feedback without requiring face-to-face meetings. She started with small projects, building a portfolio and a reputation. Word spread among indie authors that there was an editor in the North Carolina mountains who was thorough and insightful and surprisingly affordable. Her client list grew. Her rates slowly increased. By her 6th month of pregnancy, she was earning more than she had at any of her Miami jobs. The work was good for her. It gave her something to focus on besides the fear that crept in at 3 in the morning, besides the guilt that whispered she was making the wrong choice, besides the loneliness that sometimes felt like a physical weight pressing on her chest. Patricia helped with everything. She drove Dorothy to prenatal appointments. She painted the spare bedroom in soft yellows, because Dorothy did not want to know the genders yet. She assembled a second-hand crib with more swearing than Dorothy had ever heard from her. February came too quickly and too slowly at the same time. Dorothy was 3 weeks from her due date when the contractions started. A snowstorm had trapped them on the mountain. The roads were impassable. Patricia called the midwife, but she could not get through. For 6 hours, Dorothy labored in a bedroom, lit by candles and battery-powered lanterns because the power had gone out around midnight. Patricia talked her through every contraction, held her hand, told her stories about Dorothy's mother when she was pregnant with Dorothy, reminded her that women had been doing this for thousands of years, that her body knew what to do, that everything was going to be fine. At 2:47 in the morning, Dorothy's first son entered the world screaming. He came out angry, furious at being evicted from his comfortable home, announcing his presence to the universe with a wail that probably woke every animal in a 5-mile radius. Patricia caught him, cleaned him, placed him in Dorothy's trembling arms. Dark eyes, his father's eyes, even newborn, already so intense, so watchful, so determined to understand everything about this strange new world. Gabriel, Dorothy whispered. His name is Gabriel, because he announced himself like a messenger. 4 minutes later, his brother arrived. Lucas came quietly. No screaming, just a soft cry and then silence as he looked around the candlelit room with an expression of profound curiosity. Where his brother was fury, he was peace. Where Gabriel demanded attention, Lucas simply observed. He laughed, a tiny gurgling sound that should not have been possible for a newborn. But Dorothy heard it clearly, a laugh that reminded her of someone she was trying to forget. Lucas, she said, because he is the light. She held them both as the snow fell outside and the candles flickered and the world narrowed to this single moment. 2 lives she had created, 2 futures she was responsible for, 2 reasons to keep going when everything else felt impossible. Patricia brought her tea and took pictures and cried quietly in the corner, overwhelmed by the miracle of new life. You did it, she said, looking at Dorothy with something like awe. Alone in a snowstorm. You brought 2 lives into this world. Not alone, Dorothy said. I had you. The snow stopped by morning. The power came back. The roads cleared. And Dorothy began the hardest work of her life. Raising twins alone was everything the parenting books warned about, and nothing they could have prepared her for. The exhaustion was physical, mental, spiritual. There were nights when both boys cried simultaneously, and Dorothy sat between their cribs crying too because there was nothing else she could do. There were days when she edited manuscripts at 3 in the morning with a baby on her chest, because that was the only time anyone was calm enough to let her concentrate. There were moments of doubt so profound she had to lock herself in the bathroom and remind herself that she had chosen this, that she could call Ryan at any time, that she was doing this alone because she believed it was the right choice. And there were moments of joy so overwhelming they made all the exhaustion worthwhile. Gabriel's first word was no, defiant from birth. Her stubborn boy who took things apart to understand how they worked and put them back together better than before. Lucas's first word was mama, said with a smile so bright it could have powered a small city. Her sunshine child who made friends with everyone he met, from the mail carrier to the grocery store cashier to the stray cat that adopted their porch. They started walking within days of each other, running shortly after. Dorothy spent their 2nd year chasing 2 toddlers who moved in opposite directions and had 0 interest in staying where she put them. Patricia helped when she could. Elena, a fellow editor Dorothy had met online and eventually befriended, started visiting regularly and then moved to Asheville because, in her words, someone has to help you wrangle those chaos agents. Slowly, steadily, Dorothy built a life. Before we continue with the years that transformed Dorothy from a survivor into a builder, I want to speak directly to you. If you have ever felt invisible to someone who should have seen you, if you have ever built a life from nothing because no one else was coming to save you, if you have ever wondered whether the person who hurt you even remembers your name, then you understand Dorothy's journey in a way that matters. This is not just a story about a woman who got pregnant after one night with a millionaire. This is a story about what happens when we are forced to become more than we ever thought possible, about the strength we find when there is no other choice, about the life we can build when we finally stop waiting for someone else to build it for us. If this resonates with you, hit that like button right now, not for the algorithm, for the recognition that stories like this deserve to be told. Share this video with someone who is in the middle of their own building season. Someone who needs to know that the struggle has a purpose, even when the purpose is not visible yet. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson's stories because, trust me, what happens next is going to test everything you think you know about forgiveness and second chances. The phone call that changes everything is coming, and you will not want to miss it. Now let us continue with the years that proved Dorothy Vale could do the impossible. Year 1 was survival. Pure survival. Dorothy measured success in whether everyone was fed, clothed, and reasonably rested by the end of each day. Year 2 was the year of firsts. First steps, first words, first tantrums that tested every ounce of patience Dorothy possessed. She incorporated her editing business and gave it a real name. Vale Editorial Services. It felt official. It felt like progress. Year 3 was when everything changed. One of Dorothy's clients, an indie romance author she had been working with for 2 years, had a book take off unexpectedly. It hit multiple bestseller lists. The acknowledgement section credited Dorothy specifically. My editor, Dorothy Vale, saw what this book could be when I could only see what it was. She made me a better writer. Suddenly, Dorothy's inbox was flooded with requests. Authors who had seen the acknowledgement. Publishers looking for freelance editors. Agents wondering if she was available for developmental work. She raised her rates. Clients kept coming. She hired Elena as a full-time editor. Then a second contractor. Then a third. She bought a house. Small, modest, but hers. A yard for the boys to dig in and plant vegetables. A home office where she could work while watching them through the window. Walls she could paint any color she wanted because she was not renting anymore. Year 4 was the year Dorothy stopped surviving and started thriving. Her business had expanded beyond editing into consulting. She helped authors navigate the publishing industry, advised indie writers on marketing strategy, built systems that made the process of writing and publishing less overwhelming. Her net worth crossed $3 million. She had clients in 12 countries. She employed 8 people who worked remotely but gathered quarterly for strategy sessions and what Lucas called team fun days. She was featured in a regional business magazine. Single mother builds publishing empire from kitchen table. The photo showed her in her home office with the twins playing in the background, a deliberate choice to show that success and motherhood were not mutually exclusive. The twins turned 4 in February. Their party had a cake shaped like a dragon and a skyscraper, because compromising between Gabriel and Lucas's interests was the only way to keep the peace. Dorothy stood in her kitchen that night, after the boys were asleep, looking at the life she had constructed from nothing. Pride. That was what she felt. A fierce, protective pride in what she had accomplished without anyone's help. Without Ryan Morales. Without the Morales money. Without the world that would have swallowed her children whole. She had done this. Alone. And it was enough. It was more than enough. And then one ordinary Tuesday, her phone rang with a Miami number she did not recognize. Dorothy almost let it go to voicemail. She was in the middle of reviewing contracts, the twins were at preschool, and unknown numbers usually meant spam calls or client inquiries that could wait. Something made her answer. Miss Vale. This is Martin Prescott, from Prescott Legal Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Ricardo Morales. Dorothy's blood went cold. She sat down hard on her office chair. Ricardo Morales, Ryan's father, the patriarch who had demanded heirs with such obsession that 3 marriages had crumbled under the weight of his expectations. The man who treated women like breeding vessels and children like legacy assets. I am sorry, Dorothy said carefully. I think you have the wrong number. I do not know anyone by that name. There was a pause. Miss Vale, Dorothy, I apologize for the intrusion, but I have reason to believe you may be relevant to Mr. Ricardo Morales' estate. He passed away 3 weeks ago, and his final wishes contain provisions that require me to locate any biological grandchildren he may have, particularly those he never knew existed. The world tilted. Dorothy gripped her desk and tried to remember how breathing worked. I do not know what you are talking about. 4 years ago, you attended an event at the Belmont Hotel. Martin's voice was gentle, but inexorable. You were seen leaving the following morning from a suite registered to Ryan Morales. 7 months later, you gave birth to twin boys in North Carolina. I understand your desire for privacy, but this is not about judgment or exposure. This is about a dying man's final wish to know his legacy would continue. Dying man. Wishes. Legacy. The words bounced around Dorothy's skull without finding purchase. Ricardo Morales had hired investigators, had found her, had tracked the timeline of her pregnancy and put together the pieces she had worked so hard to hide. And now he was dead. But his reach extended from beyond the grave, demanding even now what he had demanded his entire life. Heirs. I do not want his money, Dorothy said flatly. I do not want any part of that family. That is your right, Martin replied. But your sons may feel differently when they are 18. And Ryan has the right to know he is a father. The words hit like a physical blow. Ryan does not know. 4 years, and he still does not know. Dorothy had built her entire life around that secret, had justified it with stories about protection and safety and keeping her children away from a world that would consume them. But underneath all the justifications was a simpler truth. She had been afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of being absorbed into his world on his terms. Afraid of losing control of the life she had fought so hard to build. And now, 4 years later, a dead man's final wish was forcing her to confront everything she had been avoiding. You have options, Martin continued. You can refuse all contact. You can disappear again and let this estate matter resolve without your involvement. Or you can attend the will reading next week. Meet Ryan. Tell him the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. Dorothy closed her eyes. She saw Gabriel's dark eyes, so like his father's. Lucas's laugh, the same laugh she had heard once in a hotel room. 2 children who had asked about their father with increasing frequency, and whom she had always deflected with answers that felt less adequate every time. How long do I have to decide? The will reading is in 3 days. But, Dorothy, this is not something that is going away. Ricardo's investigators found you once. Others will too, eventually. The question is not whether this secret comes out. The question is whether it comes out on your terms or someone else's. Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. I will call you tomorrow with my decision. She hung up and sat in her office as the afternoon light shifted across the walls. The house was quiet. The boys would not be home for 2 more hours. She had time to think, to plan, to decide. But she already knew what she was going to do. She had known from the moment Martin Prescott said Ryan has the right to know he is a father. Her children deserved to know where they came from. They deserved access to that part of their identity, even if it meant Dorothy had to face the man who had left her with nothing but 7 words and 2 heartbeats. She picked up her phone and called Elena. I need you to watch the boys this weekend. I am going to Miami. That night, after the twins were asleep, Dorothy sat in their doorway and watched them breathe. Gabriel had a book about buildings under his pillow. Even in sleep, his brow was slightly furrowed, like he was solving problems in his dreams. Lucas slept with his arms out, trusting the world completely. A stuffed dragon was tucked under his chin. She had built this life to protect them. Had made choices that seemed right at the time, necessary at the time. But watching them now, she wondered if protection had become its own kind of prison. They asked about their father constantly. Why does everyone else have a daddy? Where is ours? Why did he leave? When is he coming back? Dorothy's answers had grown less convincing over the years. He does not know about you. He is far away. It is complicated. But it was not complicated, not really. She had been afraid. And her fear had denied them something they had every right to have. A father. Maybe he would fail them. Maybe he would prove to be exactly the machine his own father had tried to create. Maybe bringing him into their lives would be the worst mistake she ever made. But maybe not. Maybe people could change. Maybe Ryan was not the man who left that note anymore. Maybe 4 years had transformed him the way that they had transformed her. There was only one way to find out. The next morning, she sat the twins down at the kitchen table. I need to tell you something important. Gabriel's eyes sharpened immediately. He always knew when something serious was coming. Lucas looked up from his cereal with open curiosity. There is a man who might be your father. Someone called and told me he might want to know you exist. Gabriel processed this with visible skepticism. Why did you not tell us before? Why did he not want to know before? Dorothy chose her words carefully. When you love someone and they hurt you really badly, sometimes you need space to heal. I needed that space, and I wanted to make sure I could give you both a good life before I let anyone else into it. Maybe that was not the perfect choice, but it was the choice I made with the information I had at the time. Lucas tilted his head. Is he nice? I do not know. I knew him for one night, a long time ago. But someone told me he wants to meet you, and I think you deserve to decide if you want to meet him. What if we meet him and he does not like us? Gabriel asked quietly. Would that make us sad? Probably. What if we do not meet him, and he would have liked us? Would that make him sad? Maybe. Gabriel nodded slowly, his expression too serious for a 4-year-old. Lucas spoke up. Tell him, Mama. Because right now he is sad and does not know why. At least if you tell him, he will know why he is sad. That is better than not knowing. Out of the mouths of children, Dorothy pulled them both into her arms and held them close. We are going to Miami this weekend. We are going to meet your father. And whatever happens after that, we are going to figure it out together. Okay, Gabriel said. But Mama, if he is mean to you, I will protect you. I know you will, baby. I know you will. 3 days later, Dorothy stepped off a private jet at Miami International Airport with 2 4-year-olds who had no idea they were about to change everything. The jet had been a surprise. Martin Prescott had arranged it, part of the estate's resources allocated to ensure the potential heirs arrived comfortably. Dorothy had almost refused, had almost booked commercial flights because she did not need Morales money and did not want to start this journey with obligations. But Gabriel had seen pictures of private jets online, and his eyes had gone so wide, and Lucas had asked if they could see the clouds up close, and Dorothy had found herself saying yes. It was just a plane. It did not mean anything. But sitting in those leather seats, watching her sons press their faces to the windows and marvel at the world below, Dorothy felt the first stirrings of doubt. This was their world too, the Morales world, the world of private jets and estates and wealth beyond imagining. They were heirs to it whether she liked it or not. Had she been protecting them or denying them? The question followed her all the way to the Morales estate, where the gates opened automatically and the gardens stretched perfectly manicured and the house rose like a monument to generations of ambition. And then she was in that marble foyer, face to face with the man who had left her 4 years ago with nothing but 7 words. And everything that came after started from that single moment. The moment when Ryan Morales looked at his sons for the first time and understood what he had been missing. The moment when Dorothy Vale realized that the walls she had built might need to come down. The moment when Gabriel stepped between them and said, "Do not yell at my mama." The moment when Lucas asked, "Do you like dragons?" The moment when everything changed. The silence in the marble foyer stretched until it became unbearable. Ryan still sat on the floor where his legs had given out, looking up at his sons with an expression that cycled through grief and wonder, and something that looked like prayer. Gabriel maintained his protective stance in front of Dorothy, his small body radiating a fierce energy that seemed impossible for someone who had only been alive for 4 years. Lucas had moved closer to Ryan, studying him with open curiosity, apparently satisfied that the dragon question had been answered appropriately. "We should talk," Dorothy said finally. "Not here, not like this." Ryan nodded and pushed himself to his feet, his movements slow and careful like he was afraid sudden motion might make them disappear. "There is a study down the hall," he said. "My father's study. It is private." The twins looked to Dorothy for guidance. She squeezed their hands. "You two are going to stay with Mr. Prescott for a little while. There are tablets and snacks in the sitting room. The adults need to talk about grown-up things." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "Are you going to be okay?" "I am going to be fine. We are just talking. I do not trust him yet," Gabriel said, loud enough for Ryan to hear. Ryan flinched but did not argue. "That is fair. You do not know me, but I hope I get the chance to change that." "We will see," Gabriel replied with devastating 4-year-old honesty. Martin Prescott appeared and guided the twins toward a room filled with comfortable furniture and age-appropriate entertainment. Lucas went willingly, already chattering about the tablet games he wanted to play. Gabriel went reluctantly, looking back over his shoulder every few steps to make sure Dorothy was still standing. "He is protective," Ryan observed quietly. "He has had to be," Dorothy replied. "When you are the man of the house at 4 years old, you learn to watch out for the people you love." The words landed like blows. Ryan absorbed them without defense. The study was exactly what Dorothy expected from Ricardo Morales. Leather and dark wood and portraits of serious men who had built empires. The weight of generations pressed down from every surface, demanding achievement, demanding legacy, demanding heirs. Ryan poured himself something amber from a crystal decanter. His hands were shaking. "Do you want anything?" "Water," Dorothy said. "I want to be completely clear-headed for this conversation." He poured her water from a pitcher on the sideboard and handed it to her without meeting her eyes. They sat across from each other in leather chairs that probably cost more than Dorothy's first car. The distance between them was measured in more than feet. "I looked for you," Ryan said finally. "After Singapore, I looked for you for 6 months." Dorothy felt something shift in her chest. He looked for her. "I had the hotel call back your department to get your last name. They said no one named Dorothy worked the event. You were temp staff, not on their permanent roster. I hired a private investigator, but all he had was Dorothy, an event coordinator, and Miami. That is not enough to find anyone." Dorothy processed this information slowly. He had looked. He had tried. The note had not been a dismissal but a farewell, written by someone who did not know how to stay but wished he could. "Why did you leave?" she asked. "That morning. Why a note instead of a conversation?" Ryan stared into his glass like it contained answers. "Because I was a coward. Because what happened between us was real in a way nothing in my life had been real, and that terrified me. Because my father was dying and demanding heirs, and I had just spent a night with someone who made me feel like maybe I could be more than a legacy machine, and I did not know how to reconcile those things. So you ran. So I ran. To Singapore. To work. To the only thing I knew how to do, which was build and acquire and achieve. I convinced myself that one night did not change anything. That you were better off without me dragging you into my family's dysfunction." Dorothy's laugh was bitter. "Better off. I was pregnant with twins. I had $127,000 in debt. I ate 1 meal a day to afford prenatal vitamins. Does that sound like better off to you?" Ryan's face crumpled. "I did not know. How could I have known? You did not tell me. You did not give me any way to tell you." Dorothy's voice rose despite her intentions. 7 words on hotel stationery. No phone number. No email. No way to reach you that did not involve calling your corporate office and leaving a message that would have been screened by 17 assistants before it ever reached you. I would have come back. Would you? Because from where I was standing, you looked a lot like a wealthy man who had used a struggling event coordinator for one night and then disappeared to your real life. That is not. Ryan stopped, took a breath. You are right. That is exactly what it looked like. And I have no defense except that I was stupid and scared and completely unprepared for what happened between us. What did happen between us? Dorothy asked. Because I have spent 4 years trying to understand, and I still do not have an answer. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I fell in love with you, he said simply. In one night, in a service corridor and a hotel room and 6 hours of conversation that made me realize I had never actually talked to anyone before. Not really. I fell in love with you, and it terrified me because I did not know how to love anything that was not approved by my father's strategic planning committee. Dorothy felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. You do not get to say that. You do not get to claim love while sitting in your dead father's study 4 years after abandoning me. I know. I know I do not have the right, but you asked what happened, and that is the truth. I have spent 4 years building a life that looks exactly like what my father wanted, while knowing that the only night I ever felt alive was the night I spent with you. Pretty words. I know they mean nothing. Ryan set his glass down and met her eyes for the first time since they sat down. I know I destroyed any right I had to your trust. I know sorry does not begin to cover what I did to you. But Dorothy, I am not asking you to forgive me or give me another chance with you. I am asking for the opportunity to be a father to them. I will prove myself through actions, not words. Dorothy studied his face, looking for the lies underneath the pretty speeches. She had gotten very good at reading people over the past 4 years. Clients who promised to pay and did not. Partners who seemed trustworthy until they were not. Men who said one thing and meant another. But what she saw in Ryan's face was not deception. It was desperation. The desperate hope of someone who had just discovered he had something worth hoping for. I need you to understand something, Dorothy said carefully. I did not keep them from you to hurt you. I did it because I was terrified. Of what? Of your father. Of your world. Of being absorbed into a machine that would turn my children into heirs instead of humans. I read the articles, Ryan. 3 marriages. 3 women discarded because they could not produce the legacy your father demanded. I was not going to let that happen to me or to them. Ryan closed his eyes. You were not wrong to be afraid. My father was. He was exactly what you feared. He spent his entire life treating people as assets or obstacles. Wives were breeding programs. Children were investments. Everything and everyone was evaluated based on their contribution to the Morales legacy. And you Were you different? No. Ryan's voice was heavy with self-loathing. I was exactly what he made me. A machine that measured success in acquisitions and failed at everything that mattered. 3 marriages, Dorothy. 3 women who thought they were marrying a human being and discovered they had married a corporation in a suit. What changed? He died. And instead of grief, all I felt was relief. Relief that I would never have to hear him demand heirs again. Relief that I could finally stop performing and start, I do not know, being. He paused. And then Martin called me 3 weeks ago and told me that my father had hired investigators to find any potential grandchildren. That he had tracked down a woman who left the Belmont Hotel the morning after a fundraiser 4 years ago. That there were twins in North Carolina whose timeline matched perfectly with me, with you. And suddenly the relief turned into something else. Terror, hope, the desperate need to know if it was true. If I had children out there who did not know I existed. You flew here for the will reading. I flew here the day Martin told me. I have been in Miami for 3 weeks, waiting for confirmation, waiting for you to decide whether to come. He met her eyes. I would have waited forever if that is what it took. Dorothy did not know what to do with this information. The narrative she had constructed, the story of the careless billionaire who had used her and forgotten her, it did not fit with the man sitting across from her. This man seemed broken in a different way, not callous but damaged, not indifferent but afraid. I do not trust you, she said finally. I do not know if I can ever trust you. But my children. She stopped. Our children, they deserve to know their father. If you are serious about being in their lives, you will have to prove it. I will, whatever it takes, whatever conditions you set, I will meet them. It will not be easy. I will not make it easy. I do not expect you to. Good, because here is what happens now. We attend the will reading. We do the DNA testing that confirms what we both already know. And then we negotiate terms for your involvement in their lives. Terms that I set. Terms that you follow without argument. If you break them even once, you are out. No second chances. Agreed. You say that now. But Damien, fatherhood is not a boardroom. You cannot delegate it when it gets boring. You cannot schedule it around acquisitions. These are children who need consistency, not a part-time parent who shows up when convenient. I understand that. Do you? Because 4 years ago, you chose convenience over commitment. You chose the easy path over the hard one. What is different now? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. I am different. 4 years of therapy. 4 years of examining why I was so broken that I could not stay for someone who made me feel alive. 4 years of learning to recognize my father's voice in my head and choosing not to listen to it. I am not the man who left that note, Dorothy. That man was a coward. I am trying to be something better. Trying is not enough. Then I will do more than try. I will succeed, because failing them. He gestured toward the door, toward the room where the twins were waiting. Failing them is not an option I can live with. Dorothy stood. Her legs were unsteady, but her voice was not. We will see. The will reading is in an hour. After that, we do the DNA test. After that, we discuss terms. Until then, you can spend time with them. Supervised. I will be in the room at all times. Of course. And Ryan, if you hurt them, if you let them down, if you do anything that makes them feel like they are not wanted or not enough, I will destroy you. I do not care how many billions you have or how many lawyers you can hire. I will make your life a nightmare until you wish you had never found us. She meant every word. He could see it in her eyes. I believe you, he said quietly, and I hope I never give you reason to follow through. The will reading was held in the formal dining room, a space designed to intimidate. Distant relatives filled the chairs, people Dorothy did not know and did not care to know. They whispered when she entered with the twins, speculation buzzing like insects in the summer heat. Who is she? Those children. Morales' eyes. Could it be? Dorothy kept her spine straight and her face neutral. She had survived worse than wealthy gossip. The twins sat on either side of her, Gabriel alert and watchful, Lucas drawing dragons on a notepad someone had provided. Ryan sat across the table, his eyes returning to his children every few seconds like he still could not believe they existed. Martin Prescott stood at the head of the table, reading from documents that detailed the distribution of Ricardo Morales' considerable assets. Properties in 12 countries. Investment portfolios worth hundreds of millions. art collections and antiques, and all the trappings of generational wealth. The distant relatives received their portions with varying degrees of satisfaction and disappointment. Dorothy tuned out most of it, focused on keeping the twins calm and entertained. Then Martin cleared his throat. There is a codicil, added to Mr. Morales' will in the final weeks of his life. The room went silent. In the event that any biological grandchildren are confirmed through DNA testing, they shall inherit the primary family estate and a trust fund of $150 million to be managed until their 25th birthdays. Gasps echoed around the room. Dorothy felt the blood drain from her face. $150 million. Her children. Heirs. The whispers became a roar. Who are those children? Where did they come from? This is outrageous. Ricardo never mentioned grandchildren. Martin raised his hand for silence. DNA testing will confirm or deny the claim. Until such time as the results are available, all disbursements from this portion of the estate will be held in escrow. Ryan stood. I will consent to DNA testing immediately. I have no doubt about the results, but I want to be clear about something. He looked around the table at the assembled relatives. These children are my sons. Whatever the legal process requires, whatever documentation is needed, they are mine. And anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. The room fell silent again, this time with a different quality. Fear, perhaps, or respect, or some combination that came from watching a quiet man suddenly become dangerous. Gabriel tugged on Dorothy's sleeve. Mama, he whispered. Why is everyone staring at us? Because they just found out you exist, Dorothy whispered back. And some of them do not like it. Why not? Because sometimes adults care more about money than people. That is stupid. Yes, it is. The DNA testing happened the next morning at a clinical facility that probably charged more for a cheek swab than Dorothy used to make in a month. Gabriel asked technical questions about how DNA testing worked, firing queries at the technician until the woman looked both impressed and exhausted. So you take cells from inside our mouths, and those cells have chromosomes, and the chromosomes have genes. And the genes tell you who our parents are. That is exactly right. The technician said, You are very smart. I know. Gabriel replied without arrogance. I like to understand how things work. Lucas was simpler. Will it hurt? Not at all. Just a little swab inside your cheek. Lucas submitted bravely, squeezing Dorothy's hand but not crying. Ryan watched his sons with undisguised wonder. Every question Gabriel asked, every brave face Lucas made, every small moment that revealed who they were as people. They are incredible, he said quietly to Dorothy while the technician processed the samples. I know. I raised them. The reminder landed as intended. Ryan nodded slowly. You did, and I can never thank you enough for that. For giving them everything they needed when I was not there to help. I did not do it for thanks. I did it because they are mine. They are mine too, Ryan said carefully. Now that I know they exist, they are mine too. Dorothy did not argue. She could not argue with biology, but biology was not the same as belonging. Ryan would have to earn the belonging. The results came back 3 days later. Martin called Dorothy at her hotel. The DNA confirms paternity with 99.97% certainty. Gabriel and Lucas are biologically Ryan Morales' children. They are legal heirs to the Morales estate. Dorothy sat on the edge of her hotel bed and let the words wash over her. It was official now, documented, undeniable. Her sons were Morales heirs, worth $150 million, connected forever to a family she had tried to protect them from. Ryan called an hour later. I want to see them. Can I come to the hotel? Just to spend time with them. Please. Dorothy considered refusing, considered maintaining the distance she had worked so hard to create. But she remembered Lucas asking, Do you like dragons, and Gabriel stepping between them to protect her, and the look on Ryan's face when he first saw his children. Come at noon. We can have lunch together. But Ryan, this is supervised. I am in the room. We go at their pace, not yours. Whatever you need. He arrived at exactly noon with no gifts because Dorothy had been clear that he was not allowed to buy their affection. He came with only himself, dressed down in jeans and a casual shirt, looking nothing like the man in the expensive suit she remembered. Hi, he said to the twins, hovering in the doorway like he was afraid to presume welcome. Hi, Lucas replied easily. Did you really learn to like dragons? I have been studying, Ryan said seriously. I watched 3 documentaries about dragon mythology and I read 2 children's books about dragons just last night. Lucas's face lit up. What is your favorite kind of dragon? I think I like the ones that breathe ice instead of fire. They seem more unusual. Lucas considered this carefully. That is an acceptable answer. You may come in. Dorothy almost laughed at her son granting permission like a tiny monarch. Gabriel was less welcoming. He stood by the window with his arms crossed, watching Ryan with obvious suspicion. Why did you not know about us? He asked once Ryan was seated on the couch. Were you hiding? I was not hiding, Ryan said carefully. Your mother and I. We met once, a long time ago. And then I had to go away for work. I did not know she was going to have you. She did not tell me. Why not? Gabriel's eyes moved to Dorothy, demanding the adult explanation that had never satisfied him. Because I was scared, Dorothy said honestly. I did not know if your father was a good person or not. I wanted to make sure I could take care of you myself before I let anyone else help. Gabriel absorbed this. Are you a good person? He asked Ryan directly. I am trying to be, Ryan said. I have made a lot of mistakes, big ones, but I am trying to be better. Trying is not the same as being. No, it is not. You are right about that. Gabriel nodded, apparently satisfied with the honesty even if he was not satisfied with the answer. Okay, he said. You can stay, but I am watching you. I would expect nothing less. They had lunch at the hotel restaurant. Simple food. Pizza and chicken fingers and French fries because the twins were not interested in fine dining and Ryan did not argue. Dorothy watched him interact with their children. Watched him listen when Lucas explained the elaborate mythology of his dragon kingdom. Watched him engage when Gabriel started asking questions about how tall buildings did not fall down. Structural engineering, Ryan said, leaning forward with genuine interest. It is fascinating. The building has to distribute weight properly so it does not collapse. There are these things called load-bearing walls. Gabriel's eyes went wide. Tell me everything. For an hour, Ryan explained architecture to a 4-year-old, not dumbing it down exactly, but translating it into terms Gabriel could understand. Load-bearing walls became walls that hold up the roof. Foundation stress distribution became making sure the bottom is strong enough to hold the top. Gabriel absorbed every word like he was learning the secrets of the universe. Lucas eventually got bored and wandered to Dorothy's side. Mama, he whispered. Gabriel really likes him. It seems that way. Do you like him? The question Dorothy had been avoiding. She looked at Ryan, animated and engaged, treating her son's questions with the same seriousness he would give a board meeting. I do not know yet, she said honestly. I am still deciding. That is okay, Lucas said. Sometimes deciding takes a long time. You should take all the time you need. When did her 4-year-old become so wise? After lunch, Ryan asked if he could see them again the next day. We are flying home tomorrow afternoon, Dorothy said. The twins have school on Monday. Then can I? He hesitated. Can I come to Asheville? Not immediately, but soon, to start building something consistent. Dorothy had prepared for this conversation, had documents ready. If you want to be involved, it has to be real. Not occasional visits when your schedule allows. Not gifts instead of presents. Real engagement. She pulled out a folder and handed it to him. These are my terms. Visitation schedules. Communication guidelines. Financial arrangements that make clear I do not need or want your money, only your consistency. If you agree to these, we can discuss next steps. Ryan opened the folder and began reading. His face shifted through several expressions as he absorbed the document. Supervised visits for the first 6 months. He read aloud. Video calls 3 times per week. No gifts over $50 without prior approval. No travel with the children without 2 weeks' notice and written permission. No discussion of the Morales family wealth or inheritance until the children are at least 10. He looked up. This is fair. More than fair. I agree to all of it. You say that now, but following through is different. I understand. And I will prove it to you. However long it takes. They flew back to Asheville the next afternoon. The twins slept for most of the flight, exhausted from 3 days of emotional intensity. Dorothy watched the clouds pass beneath them and tried to process everything that had happened. Her sons were heirs to $150 million. Their father wanted to be part of their lives. The walls she had built for 4 years were about to be tested. She did not know if she was ready. She did not know if she would ever be ready. But watching Gabriel curl up in his seat with a book about buildings that Ryan had given him, watching Lucas clutch a stuffed dragon that had mysteriously appeared in his backpack, Dorothy realized that ready or not, this was happening. Ryan called that night, exactly when he said he would. "I wanted to say good night," he said. "If that is okay. Can I talk to them before bed?" The twins gathered around her phone, faces illuminated by the screen. "Hi," Ryan said. "I just wanted to tell you that meeting you was the best thing that has happened to me in a very long time, and I cannot wait to see you again." "When?" Lucas asked immediately. 2 weeks. Your mom and I agreed. I will come to Asheville, and we can do something fun together. Can we go to the Natural History Museum? Gabriel asked. They have a whole section on architectural history. Absolutely. Can we see butterflies? Lucas added. I want to see butterflies. Then we will do both. Museum and butterflies. Whatever you want. The twins seemed satisfied with this plan. They said goodnight without drama, already adapting to this new person in their lives with the remarkable flexibility of children who had been raised to handle complexity. After they were in bed, Dorothy stood in her kitchen and stared at her phone. A text from Ryan. Thank you for today. For everything. I meant what I said. I will prove myself. Sleep well. She typed back. Actions, not words. See you in 2 weeks. Short. Professional. Giving nothing away. Exactly as it should be. The 2 weeks passed in the familiar rhythm of single parenthood. School runs and client calls. Bedtime stories and contract negotiations. The ordinary routine that had become Dorothy's life. But now there was something new. Every night at 7, Ryan called. The first call was awkward. Long silences and forced conversations about what did you do today and what is your favorite color and all the surface-level questions strangers ask when they are trying to become something more. By the third call, Gabriel was showing Ryan his drawings of buildings through the camera. Elaborate designs for skyscrapers and bridges and what Gabriel called optimal structural solutions. This one has a cantilever, Gabriel explained, pointing to a feature in his sketch. Like we talked about, it extends horizontally without support on one end. That is exactly right, Ryan said. You have an incredible eye for this. Have you thought about engineering camp this summer? I could look into programs that might interest you. Gabriel's eyes lit up in a way Dorothy rarely saw. Really, there are camps for engineering. There are camps for everything. And I think you would excel at something focused on architecture and structural design. Dorothy watched from the doorway, not quite in the room, not quite out of it. Monitoring without interfering. By the 5th call, Lucas was singing songs he had learned at school. Ryan listened with apparent fascination, clapping at the end of each performance, asking questions about the music teacher and the choreography. You have a beautiful voice, Ryan said. Thank you. Lucas replied matter-of-factly. I practice a lot in the shower. Mama says I am going to use all the hot water, but I tell her artistic development is important. Your mama is very wise. I know. Lucas agreed. She is the smartest person in the world. I believe it. By the end of the first week, the calls were the part of the day the twins looked forward to most. They ran to the phone when it rang, fighting over who got to talk first, demanding Ryan's attention with the unself-conscious greed of children who had found something they wanted. Dorothy watched and felt her walls shift. Not crumble, but shift, like tectonic plates adjusting to new pressure. This was good for them. She could see it clearly. The way Gabriel opened up about his interests. The way Lucas performed his songs with increasing confidence. The way they both ran to tell her things their father had said, incorporating him into their narratives without hesitation. But good for them was not the same as good for her. Every time she saw Ryan's face on the screen, every time she heard his voice, every time she watched him engage with their children with patience and attention, she remembered. The hotel room. The conversation. The way he had made her feel seen, a way no one had before or since. And she remembered the note. The 7 words. The years of struggle that had followed. She did not know which version of him was real. The man who had connected with her so deeply in one night, or the man who had disappeared the next morning without looking back. She supposed that was what the next months would reveal. Ryan arrived in Asheville on a Friday afternoon. 2 weeks to the day after they had left Miami. He texted when his plane landed, when he checked into his hotel, when he was on his way to her house. The constant updates felt like someone proving they understood accountability. Dorothy appreciated it, even if she refused to acknowledge the appreciation. When the doorbell rang, both twins raced to answer it. "Slow down," Dorothy called after them. "What have I told you about answering the door? Check who it is first," Gabriel recited impatiently. "But we know who it is. The rules apply even when you know." "Fine." Gabriel stood on his toes to look through the peephole, then announced, "It is our dad," in a tone that suggested Dorothy was being unnecessarily cautious. "Our dad." The casual possessive hit Dorothy in the chest. She opened the door. Ryan stood on her porch in jeans and a casual jacket, looking nothing like the polished billionaire she remembered. Looking instead like someone trying very hard to be normal. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she replied. They stood there for a moment, two adults navigating the awkward geography of CO parenting with history. Then Lucas grabbed Ryan's hand and started pulling him inside. "Come see my room. I have a whole dragon collection. There are 17 dragons and they all have names and personalities and political alignments." "Political alignments?" Ryan asked, allowing himself to be dragged. "It is complicated," Gabriel said seriously. "There was a civil war. Some of the dragons are loyalists and some are revolutionaries. Lucas has it all mapped out. I would love to see the map." The tour of the house took 45 minutes. Lucas showed off his dragon collection with detailed commentary about each character's backstory and motivation. Gabriel showed his room, which featured blueprints on the walls and a desk full of graph paper covered in architectural sketches. Ryan examined everything with genuine interest, asked questions that showed he was paying attention, treated their 4-year-old concerns with the same respect he probably gave board meeting presentations. By the time they finished, it was nearly dinner time. "Can he stay for dinner?" Gabriel asked Dorothy. "We always eat together when someone visits." Dorothy had planned to maintain distance, to keep his visits controlled and limited to specific outings rather than integrating him into their home life. But the twins were looking at her with identical hopeful expressions, and Ryan was looking at her with an expression that managed to be hopeful and respectful at the same time. "If he wants to," she said carefully. "I would love to," Ryan said immediately. "What can I help with?" They made pasta together, Dorothy directing from her position at the stove, Ryan chopping vegetables under her instruction, the twins setting the table with the imprecise care of children who were trying very hard to do things correctly. It felt domestic. It felt normal. It felt like 1,000 ordinary family dinners Dorothy had seen other people have and told herself she did not want. During dinner, the twins told stories about school and friends and the elaborate ongoing narrative of the Dragon Civil War. Ryan listened and laughed and asked follow-up questions. Dorothy watched and said little, observing rather than participating. After dinner, Ryan helped with the dishes while the twins watched their allotted screen time in the living room. "They are incredible," Ryan said quietly, up to his elbows in soapy water. "I know I keep saying that, but it is true. You raised incredible children. I had good material to work with." Dorothy replied carefully. "You had yourself, and that was enough. More than enough." She did not know what to say to that. "Thank you," she finally managed. "For being here. For trying. Thank you for letting me try." They finished the dishes in companionable silence. When the twins' show ended, Ryan said goodnight and headed to his hotel. At the door, he paused. "Tomorrow, the museum and butterfly pavilion. What time should I pick you up?" 9. "They will be awake and fed by then. I will be here at 9. He left. Dorothy closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, overwhelmed by how ordinary the evening had been. Normal. That was the word. It had felt normal, and normal was terrifying. Before we continue with the day that would become a core memory for everyone involved, I need to pause and speak directly to you. We are at the turning point of this story. Dorothy has spent 4 years building walls so high that no one could hurt her again. Ryan has spent 4 years becoming someone worthy of the chance he is about to get. And 2 4-year-old boys are in the middle of it all, navigating adult complexity with the wisdom children sometimes have that adults forget. If you are feeling this story, if something about it resonates with your own experience of trust betrayed or second chances considered, I want you to hit that like button right now. Not for the algorithm, because stories like this deserve to be acknowledged. Because when you engage with narratives about redemption and rebuilding, you are telling the universe that these stories matter. Drop a comment below. Do you believe people can truly change? Or are we forever defined by our worst moments? I want to know what you think because your perspective matters. Share this video with someone who is wrestling with whether to give someone a second chance. Sometimes the stories we need most are the ones other people share with us. Now let us continue with the day that changed everything. The Natural History Museum was crowded with families enjoying the weekend. Parents with strollers, kids running between exhibits, the controlled chaos of public education meeting public exhaustion. Gabriel navigated through the crowd with single-minded determination, pulling Ryan toward the architectural history section while Lucas and Dorothy followed at a more relaxed pace. He really likes him, Lucas observed, watching his brother gesture excitedly at something, while Ryan listened with apparent fascination. It seems that way, Dorothy agreed. Is that okay with you? The question surprised her. Lucas was perceptive in ways that caught her off guard. I want you both to be happy, she said carefully. That is not what I asked. When did you get so wise? I was born wise, Lucas said with complete seriousness. Gabriel was born smart and I was born wise. They are different things. They are, indeed. They caught up to Ryan and Gabriel at an exhibit about architectural innovation. Ryan was explaining something about flying buttresses while Gabriel listened with the intensity of someone receiving divine revelation. Gothic cathedrals used flying buttresses to distribute the weight of the ceiling, Ryan said, pointing to the diagram. See how they arch from the wall to these external supports. That allowed the walls to be thinner and have bigger windows, because the weight went sideways instead of straight down. Gabriel finished, understanding blooming on his face. Exactly. You understand structural engineering intuitively. That is a real gift. Gabriel's face transformed, not into a smile exactly, but into something that looked like belonging, like he had finally found someone who spoke his language. They spent 3 hours at the museum. Gabriel dragged Ryan through every exhibit that had anything to do with building or engineering. Ryan explained concepts and answered questions and treated Gabriel's interest with the same seriousness he would give a professional colleague. By the time they finished, Gabriel was glowing. This is the best day ever, he announced. Dad knows everything about buildings. Dad, the word hung in the air. It was the first time Gabriel had called him that without prompting or qualification. Dorothy saw Ryan's eyes fill with tears he was obviously fighting to contain. I do not know everything, Ryan said, his voice thick, but I am happy to share what I do know. The butterfly pavilion was the opposite of the museum, chaos instead of order. Thousands of butterflies floating through a climate-controlled habitat while visitors walked among them. Lucas was enchanted immediately. He stood very still in the center of a pathway, arms outstretched, waiting with the patience of someone who understood that beautiful things came to those who did not chase them. What is he doing? Ryan whispered. He is waiting for them to choose him, Dorothy whispered back. It is something he does. A monarch butterfly landed on Lucas's outstretched hand, then another on his shoulder, then a third on top of his head. He stood motionless, his face lit with wonder, butterflies treating him like a flower they had been seeking. Dorothy pulled out her phone to take a picture, but Ryan was faster, already snapping photos from multiple angles, capturing the moment from every direction. This is incredible, he breathed. He is like a butterfly magnet. He has always been like this, Dorothy said. Animals love him. People love him. He has this energy that makes everything want to be close to him. A gift, Ryan said softly. He has a gift. I am a butterfly princess, Lucas whispered, barely moving his lips. But I am a boy, so maybe a butterfly prince. Gabriel watched his brother with a mixture of envy and pride. How do you do that? He asked. You have to be very still and think beautiful thoughts, Lucas explained. The butterflies can tell what you are thinking. That is not scientifically accurate, Gabriel countered. Try it anyway. Gabriel stood next to his father, both of them perfectly still, presumably thinking beautiful thoughts. A small blue butterfly landed on Gabriel's nose. I got one. Gabriel yelped, then immediately regretted the noise as the butterfly flew away. You scared it. I know, but I did it. A butterfly chose me. Ryan put his hand on Gabriel's shoulder. It will come back. Or another one will. We will wait together. They stood side by side, father and son, waiting for butterflies. And watching them, Dorothy felt something in her chest crack. Not break, but crack, in the way ice does when spring comes. making room for something new to emerge. This was what she had wanted for them. A father who showed up, who participated, who made ordinary moments special just by being present. But it was also dangerous, because the more Ryan proved himself, the more she would have to confront her own walls. The more she would have to decide whether they were still protection or had become isolation. After the butterflies, they stopped for ice cream despite the cool autumn weather. The twins debated flavors with intensity, while Dorothy and Ryan stood slightly apart, watching. "Thank you for today," Ryan said quietly. "For letting me be part of this. You did well," Dorothy admitted. "They are happy. That is what matters." "Can I ask you something?" He hesitated. "Not about them. About you. That depends on the question. Are you happy? Beyond being a mother, beyond your success, beyond everything you have built, are you actually happy?" The question caught her off guard. "I am content," she said carefully. "I have work that matters. Children I love. A life I built from nothing. That is more than most people get. Content is not happy. Maybe not, but content is stable. And after 4 years of fighting for stability, I will take it over the chaos of chasing happiness." Ryan absorbed this with visible sadness. "I did that to you. Made you choose survival over joy. You were part of it." Dorothy acknowledged. "But I made my own choices. I chose to leave, to start over, to build something that could not be taken from me. Those were my decisions. I do not regret them. Not even the part where you were alone. I was not alone. I had the twins. I had Elena. I had Patricia. I had the life I built. But you were lonely." It was not a question, and Dorothy did not have a defense against it. "Loneliness is the price of safety," she said finally. "I decided it was a price worth paying." Before Ryan could respond, the twins returned with their ice cream. Mint chip for Gabriel, strawberry for Lucas. They sat at a small table outside, the twins chattering about butterflies and buildings, while Dorothy and Ryan made small talk that carefully avoided anything substantial. The day ended at Dorothy's house. Ryan walked them to the door, hesitating on the threshold. "Can I come in?" he asked. "Just for a few minutes. I want to see where they live, understand their space." Dorothy considered, then nodded. "They need baths and bed soon. 30 minutes. The house was exactly what Ryan would have expected if he had thought about it. Tasteful, but lived in. The twins' artwork covering the walls. Toys organized in baskets that suggested someone fought a daily battle against chaos. Family photos covered one wall. 4 years of life documented. Birthdays and holidays. First days of school. Random afternoons deemed photo-worthy. "You have built something beautiful," Ryan said, studying a photo of Dorothy and the twins at a pumpkin patch. All 3 of them laughing at something outside the frame. "I built something safe," Dorothy corrected. Beautiful was never the goal. The tour of the twins' rooms took longer than the 30 minutes Dorothy had allotted. Each child insisted on showing Ryan their treasured possessions, explaining their significance with a kind of detail that suggested they wanted him to know everything about them all at once. Ryan listened, asked questions, treated their concerns with respect. When he finally left, long past the twins' bedtime, he paused at the door. "Can I see them tomorrow? Before I fly back? Nothing elaborate, just lunch. Whatever fits your schedule." Dorothy considered. She had planned to maintain distance, to keep his visits controlled, but the twins had been so happy today. "Lunch," she agreed. "Noon. There is a park near here with a good playground. We will meet you there. Thank you for everything, Ryan. I know one good day does not erase 4 years of absence, but I want you to know I am serious about this, about them. I am not going anywhere. Time will tell," Dorothy replied. "It always does." The next 2 months established a rhythm. Ryan visited every 2 weeks. Video calls happened every other day. The twins grew increasingly comfortable with their father's presence in their lives. Gabriel started showing Ryan his more ambitious architectural designs, the ones he had been afraid to share with anyone because he thought people would think they were too complicated for a 4-year-old. Ryan not only understood them, he helped refine them, suggested improvements, treated Gabriel's work like it mattered. Lucas performed increasingly elaborate Dragon Kingdom updates. The political situation had evolved. There was a new alliance forming, Several dragons had switched allegiances. Ryan kept track of all the characters, asked about their motivations, remembered details from previous conversations. Dorothy watched and kept her distance. She was in the room for every visit, every video call, every interaction, monitoring without interfering, looking for cracks in the facade. But the cracks never came. Ryan showed up, consistently, even when it was inconvenient, even when work demanded his attention, even when weather delayed his flights and he had to drive 6 hours to keep his scheduled visit. He showed up. 3 months after that first visit to Asheville, Ryan made an announcement. They were having dinner at Dorothy's house, a routine that had become normal without Dorothy quite noticing when it happened. Ryan cooking while Dorothy supervised homework, the twins setting the table with varying degrees of accuracy. "I have some news," Ryan said as they sat down. "I have been restructuring my company, delegating more responsibilities to my executive team, and I have decided to open a Denver office for Morales Industries." Dorothy's heart rate increased. Denver was close to Asheville, much closer than New York, a satellite location. Ryan continued, "Small at first, but it means I can spend more time here. 3 weeks out of every month instead of just weekends." The twins erupted in cheers. Dorothy felt something between excitement and panic. "That is a significant change," she said carefully. "It is the right change," Ryan replied. "My company can function without me micromanaging every decision, but Gabriel and Lucas, they are only 4 once. I do not want to miss any more than I already have. What about your life in New York? Your friends, your routine?" "I did not have much of a life in New York. Just work. The few friends I had were really business associates. There is nothing tying me to New York except inertia. Here I have my children. That matters more than anything else." Dorothy did not know what to say. The twins did. "Does this mean we can see you every day?" Lucas asked hopefully. "Not every day, but much more often." "Can you come to my soccer games?" Gabriel pressed. "Every single one if you will let me." "Can you help me with my Dragon Kingdom?" Lucas added. "The diplomatic situation is getting complicated and I need a strategic advisor. I would be honored to serve as your strategic advisor." The twins accepted this with the easy adaptation of children. Dorothy sat with her fork halfway to her mouth, trying to process the implications. Ryan was moving here, restructuring his entire life. For them, for her children, for their children. The walls she had built were not going to hold against this. She could feel them shifting, cracking, preparing to either crumble or be reinforced. She did not know which yet. That night, after Ryan left and the twins were asleep, Dorothy called Elena. "He is moving here, relocating his business. He says he wants to be present for their lives. And how do you feel about that?" "I do not feel anything about it. This is not about me. It is about them." "Dorothy." Elena's voice was patient in that way that meant she was not going to let this go. "You cannot keep pretending you have no stake in this. He is not just their father. He is the man you fell in love with 5 years ago. I did not fall in love with him. It was one night. Feelings do not care about timelines. You connected with him in a way you have never connected with anyone else. And now he is proving himself to be exactly what you needed him to be back then. Are you going to punish him forever for who he was? Or are you going to give him credit for who he has become?" Dorothy did not have an answer. "I do not know if I can trust him." She finally said, "I do not know if I can be that vulnerable again." "Then do not trust him yet. Watch him. Let him keep proving himself. But Dorothy, do not close the door permanently because you are afraid of what might be on the other side. That is just another kind of prison." Dorothy lay awake long after Elena hung up. The walls she had built were supposed to protect her, but protection and isolation were starting to feel like the same thing. Ryan moved to Asheville 6 weeks later. He bought a house in a neighborhood 20 minutes from Dorothy's, close enough to be present, far enough to respect boundaries. The twins helped him unpack, Gabriel offering opinions on furniture placement based on optimal traffic flow, Lucas naming all the closets and cabinets like they were characters in his kingdom. "This is your room," Ryan told Gabriel, showing him a bedroom with built-in bookshelves and a desk positioned to catch morning light. "For when you stay over, we can decorate it however you want." Gabriel's eyes went wide. "This is mine. Really mine. Really yours." Lucas's room was painted lavender with a window seat perfect for reading. "I love it." Lucas breathed. Can we stay tonight? Not tonight, Dorothy said gently. Your dad does not even have furniture yet. But soon, once he is settled, they explored the rest of the house. A home office where Ryan would work, a modern kitchen that opened to a backyard perfect for playing, a living room with space for movie nights. It was a home designed for the life Ryan was building, not the life he had before. After the twins ran outside to explore the yard, Dorothy and Ryan stood in the empty kitchen. This is really happening, Dorothy said. You are really here. I told you I would be. I know it took months to prove it. But I meant every word. They are my priority. This is where I need to be. Dorothy looked at this man who had left her with 7 words and returned with years of consistency, who had chosen proximity over distance, who had restructured his entire existence around 2 4-year-olds he had not known existed a year ago. Can I ask you something? She said. Not as the mother of your children, just as me. Anything. Why? Why did you choose her 5 years ago? I have never understood. We were good together. We had something real. And then the next morning you disappeared. What was I not? Ryan's face crumpled. You were not anything except exactly who you needed to be. The problem was not you, Dorothy. It was me. I was terrified. You challenged me to be better, to be more authentic, to examine the parts of myself I had been avoiding, and I was not ready for that challenge. So I ran. I chose easy over meaningful because I was too scared to do the hard work of becoming someone worthy of you. And now I have done the work. 4 years of therapy, 4 years of learning to recognize my father's voice in my head and choosing not to listen. 4 years of becoming someone who can show up and stay, not for you. I do not have the right to ask anything of you, but for them, for myself, because I finally understood that easy is not the same as good. Dorothy felt tears threatening. I am scared, she admitted, of letting you in, of trusting you with more than co-parenting, of believing this version of you is real and permanent. I am scared too, Ryan said. Scared I will mess this up somehow. Scared I do not deserve the chance you have already given me. But I am here, Dorothy. I moved my entire life to be close to our children. I restructured everything. And I did all of that whether you ever forgive me or not, because it was the right thing to do. He moved closer, not touching, just present. But if you are asking whether I would like more than TO parenting, whether I would like the chance to show you I can be the partner you deserved back then, the answer is yes, absolutely yes. The words hung between them. Dorothy could walk away, maintain her boundaries, keep her heart behind walls that had protected her for 4 years. Or she could take the terrifying step into possibility. I need time, she said finally. More time to see if this stability holds, to trust that you are not going to wake up one day and decide Asheville is boring and the twins are too much work and disappear. Take all the time you need. Ryan said, I am not going anywhere. That became his constant refrain over the months that followed. He showed up for school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He coached Gabriel's engineering club despite knowing nothing about formal education approaches. He attended every one of Lucas's performances and learned to braid hair through YouTube tutorials when Lucas decided he wanted elaborate styles for special occasions. He became part of the fabric of their daily lives. And Dorothy watched, looking for cracks, looking for signs that this was performance rather than reality. The cracks never came. Ryan was solid, consistent, exactly who he claimed to be. Slowly, imperceptibly, Dorothy's walls began to shift. Not crumble entirely, but shift, making room for something new. And she started to wonder if maybe, possibly, she deserved more than just content survival. Maybe she deserved the possibility of something better. 1 year after Ryan moved to Asheville, Dorothy stood in his kitchen watching him make pancakes for the twins. It was a Saturday morning ritual that had developed without anyone planning it. Ryan made breakfast. The twins helped in ways that created more mess than efficiency. Dorothy drank coffee and supervised while pretending she was not enjoying herself. You are putting too much batter. Gabriel instructed seriously. The pancakes will be too thick. I like thick pancakes. Lucas countered. They are more substantial. Substantial is not always better. It is when you are hungry. Dorothy smiled into her coffee cup. Her children argued about everything and agreed about almost nothing. And somehow their disagreements always sounded like love. Ryan flipped a pancake with practiced ease. He had learned to cook over the past year. Not gourmet meals, but the basics. The things that mattered to two children who had opinions about everything from pancake thickness to acceptable syrup to water ratios. "Mama," Lucas said, climbing onto the stool beside her, "when are you and Dad going to get married?" Dorothy nearly choked on her coffee. "What?" Gabriel rolled his eyes with the weariness of someone who had explained this concept many times. "It is a logical question," he said. "You spend all your time together. You look at each other weird. And Dad moved his whole life here. The obvious next step is marriage. That is not how adult relationships work." "It seems like it should be," Lucas said reasonably. "You love each other. We can tell. So why are you not married?" Ryan had stopped flipping pancakes. He stood at the stove with the spatula frozen in his hand, very carefully not looking at Dorothy. "Love is complicated," Dorothy said slowly. "Sometimes people need time to figure things out. You have had a year," Gabriel pointed out. "How much more time do you need? When did you two become relationship experts?" "We are not experts," Lucas said. "We are observers, and we observe that you are both happier when you are together than when you are apart. So logically, you should be together all the time. Logic does not always apply to feelings." "It should," Gabriel muttered. "Life would be much more efficient." The pancakes were slightly burned by the time Ryan returned his attention to them. He served them anyway, and no one complained. After breakfast, while the twins watched their allotted screen time, Dorothy and Ryan cleaned up together in a silence that felt different than usual. "I did not put them up to that," Ryan said finally. "In case you were wondering." "I was not wondering," Dorothy replied. "They have been asking me variations of that question for months. I just did not expect them to ambush us over pancakes. They are direct. They get it from me." Ryan smiled slightly. "They get a lot of good things from you." The compliment landed somewhere soft in Dorothy's chest. She did not know what to do with it. "They are not wrong, though," Ryan said carefully. "About us being happier together than apart." Dorothy focused very intently on the dish she was washing. "I know we said we would take things slow," Ryan continued, "and I have tried to respect that. But it has been a year, Dorothy. A year of showing up. A year of proving I can be consistent. A year of learning how to be a father, and hoping maybe someday I could be more." He set down the towel he had been using and turned to face her. "I love you. It is not a new feeling. I think I have loved you since that first night, even though I was too broken to recognize it then. And I know I do not have the right to expect anything. I know I destroyed your trust and spent years as a ghost in your life, but I am asking anyway. Is there any chance, any possibility, that you might let me try to be more than their father?" Dorothy's hands had stopped moving in the soapy water. She had known this conversation was coming, had felt it building for months in the way Ryan looked at her, in the way she found herself looking back, in the way her heart rate increased when he walked into a room, and the way she missed him when he was not there. She had been waiting for this moment, and dreading it, and hoping for it, all at the same time. "I am terrified," she said quietly. "I know. You broke me once. I put myself back together piece by piece, and it took years, and I do not know if I can survive being broken again. I know that too. So how can you ask me to risk it? How can you stand there and ask me to give you the power to destroy everything I have built?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "Because I think you are already risking it," he said finally. "I think you have been risking it for months without admitting it. And I think you are tired of being alone. Not lonely exactly, but alone. Carrying everything yourself because you decided 4 years ago that was the only safe way to live." He moved closer, still not touching, just present. "I am not asking you to stop being careful. I am not asking you to trust me completely all at once. I am asking for the chance to earn it, day by day, choice by choice. The same way I have been earning the twins' trust all year. Let me show you I can be safe for you too." Dorothy finally looked at him. "What if you hurt me again? Then I will have lost the only thing that matters, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting it. But I do not think I will hurt you. I think I have spent 4 years becoming someone who knows how to stay, and I think you know that. I think that is why you are scared, because you are starting to believe it too." The silence stretched between them. Dorothy thought about the life she had built, the walls she had constructed, the safety she had prioritized above everything else, and she thought about the way Ryan made her laugh, The way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention. The way he had restructured his entire existence to be present for their children. The way he showed up, consistently, reliably, without fail. Elena's words echoed in her mind. Do not close the door permanently because you are afraid of what might be on the other side. Okay, Dorothy said finally. Okay, we can try. But Ryan, slowly, carefully, I need to know this is real before I let myself believe in it. The smile that spread across Ryan's face was like watching the sun come out after a long winter. Whatever you need, however slow you need to go, I will be here. I am not going anywhere. They did not kiss, did not make grand declarations. They just stood in the kitchen together while their children argued about screen time in the other room, and the world quietly rearranged itself around them. It was enough. For now, it was more than enough. They started dating, which felt strange when they already had children together and spent most of their time in each other's company. But this was different, intentional, focused on discovering who they were now instead of who they had been 5 years ago. Their first real date was a quiet dinner at a restaurant in downtown Asheville. Elena watched the twins while Dorothy tried on 3 different outfits before admitting she was nervous. You look beautiful, Elena said from the doorway. Stop changing. What if this is a mistake? What if it is not? Dorothy did not have an answer to that. At the restaurant, they talked for 3 hours, about their years apart, about who they had become, about what they wanted from life, now that they had both achieved some version of success. Ryan told her about therapy, about learning to recognize the voice of his father in his head and choosing not to listen, about the slow process of becoming a person rather than a legacy machine. Dorothy told him about the early days with the twins, about the terror of doing everything alone and the pride of realizing she could, about the walls she had built and the loneliness she had pretended did not exist. They talked about their dreams, their fears, the things they had never told anyone else because there had never been anyone safe enough to hear them. It was different from that first night 5 years ago. More grounded, less desperate. They were not 2 broken people seeking shelter anymore. They were 2 people who had rebuilt themselves and were choosing carefully to see if those rebuilt versions might fit together. I like who you have become, Dorothy said over dessert. I like who you have always been. Ryan replied, I was just too broken to appreciate it before. They walked through downtown Asheville after dinner, the autumn air cool and sharp. Ryan reached for her hand. Dorothy let him take it. It felt like coming home, which was terrifying and wonderful. Absolutely worth the risk. The months that followed were a careful dance of getting closer and pulling back. Some days Dorothy woke up believing in this completely, believing that people could change, that second chances were real, that the life she was building with Ryan was solid and permanent. Other days she woke up in a cold sweat, convinced it was all going to fall apart, that she was being naive, that the man who had left her with 7 words was still hiding somewhere behind Ryan's consistent exterior. Ryan learned to recognize both kinds of days. On the believing days, he was present and engaged. On the fear days, he gave her space without disappearing. He texted simple reminders. I am here, not going anywhere. Take whatever time you need. The twins adapted to the new normal with characteristic directness. So you are dating now? Gabriel asked during one of their family dinners. We are spending time together, Dorothy said carefully. That is what dating is, Lucas pointed out. Spending time together to decide if you want to spend more time together. When did you learn so much about dating? I read books, Lucas replied with dignity. And also, I asked Elena. Of course he did. Are you going to get married? Gabriel pressed. We are not talking about marriage. We are just getting to know each other. You have known each other for 5 years, Gabriel said with exaggerated patience. How much more knowing do you need? It is complicated. Adults always say that when they do not want to explain things. Ryan laughed from across the table. He is right, you know. Do not encourage them. I am not encouraging them. I am agreeing with them. You and I have spent a year co-parenting and 6 months dating. At some point, complicated becomes an excuse rather than an explanation. Dorothy stared at him. Are you seriously siding with the 5-year-olds? I am siding with the people who can see clearly what the adults are trying to avoid. And what is that? That we love each other, that this is working, that at some point we have to stop testing and start trusting. The table went quiet. The The twins looked between their parents with expressions of rapt attention. Dorothy did not know what to say. Ryan had never been this direct before. He had always followed her lead, let her set the pace, respected her need for control. This was different. This was him asking for something. "Can we talk about this later?" She finally managed. "Without an audience." "Of course. But Dorothy, later needs to actually happen, not be postponed indefinitely because the conversation is uncomfortable." Point taken. They talked that night after the twins were asleep. Sat on Dorothy's porch while the mountain darkness wrapped around them. "I am sorry if I put you on the spot," Ryan said. "That was not fair." "No. It was honest, and you had every right to be honest. I have been using slow and careful as shields instead of strategies. You deserve better than that." "I do not need better. I need real. Whatever you are actually feeling, even if it is scared or uncertain or not ready, I can work with real. I cannot work with avoidance." Dorothy pulled her sweater tighter. "I love you," she said quietly. "I have known that for months, but I have not been able to say it because saying it makes it real, and real things can be lost." Ryan's breath caught. "I love you too. Even when you are scared. Even when you pull away. Even when you test me to see if I will stay. I love you." "I do not know how to do this," Dorothy admitted. "I have not let anyone this close since the first time. And that ended so badly that I convinced myself I would never risk it again." "What changed?" "You did. I did. We became people who might actually be good together, instead of people who were just desperate for connection. And the twins. They deserve to see their parents happy. They deserve a family that is whole instead of carefully partitioned." Ryan reached for her hand. "Then let me make you happy. Let me be part of the whole instead of a carefully controlled visitor. I have proven myself for 18 months. Let that be enough." Dorothy looked at their joined hands, his fingers intertwined with hers, solid and warm and present. "Okay," she said. Okay. No more partitions, no more controlled visits. We build this together, or we do not build it at all." Ryan pulled her close and held her like she was something precious, like she was everything he had spent 4 years learning to deserve. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," she replied. Finally, completely, out loud. The next 6 months were the happiest of Dorothy's life. Ryan moved into her house gradually. First, a toothbrush, then some clothes, then a section of the closet, then the whole thing. His house rented out to a nice family while he made Dorothy's home their home. The twins thrived on the stability. Gabriel's anxiety decreased noticeably. Lucas's joy increased exponentially. They were children who had never seen their parents together and were now watching them build something real. Family dinners became nightly events. Weekend adventures became standard. The ordinary moments, breakfast and bedtime, and everything in between, became the foundation of a life Dorothy had never allowed herself to imagine. She stopped waiting for it to fall apart. She started believing it might last. And then Ryan proposed. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Nothing special about the date. The twins were doing homework at the kitchen table. Dorothy was reviewing contracts on her laptop. Ryan was making dinner. Ordinary, normal, exactly like hundreds of other evenings they had shared. Ryan wiped his hands on a dish towel and walked over to where Dorothy was sitting. "Can I interrupt you for a second?" Dorothy looked up. "Sure. What do you need?" Ryan knelt down beside her chair. Dorothy's heart stopped. "What are you doing?" "Something I've been planning for weeks but kept chickening out of." He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a ring with a purple stone that the twins had obviously helped choose. "Dorothy Vale, you are the strongest person I have ever known. You built an empire while raising 2 children alone. You forgave me when I did not deserve it. You let me prove myself when every instinct told you to run, and you showed me what love looks like when it is earned instead of assumed." His voice shook slightly. "I spent 5 years becoming someone worthy of you. I want to spend the rest of my life continuing to earn that. Will you marry me?" Dorothy looked at the ring, at his face, at the twins who had abandoned their homework and were watching with barely contained excitement. She thought about walls and their demolition, about fear and its opposite, about the life she had built alone and the life they were building together. "Yes," she said. But not because of one night 5 years ago. Because of every day since you came back. Ryan slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. The twins exploded from their chairs. She said yes. Lucas shouted. We knew she would say yes. Finally, Gabriel added with theatrical exasperation. We have been waiting forever. Ryan stood and pulled Dorothy to her feet, then into his arms. The twins crashed into them from both sides, creating a tangle of limbs and laughter and joy. A family, finally complete. Before we continue to the conclusion of this story, I need to pause and speak directly to you one final time. We have traveled so far together. From that first night at the Belmont Hotel to this moment of joy in a kitchen in Asheville. You have watched Dorothy build walls and then slowly let them come down. You have watched Ryan transform from a man who ran from connection into a man who ran toward it. You have watched two children teach their parents more about love than any adult ever could. If this story has moved you, if you have seen yourself in Dorothy's fear or Ryan's redemption or the twins' unconditional acceptance, then I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button, not for the algorithm, for the recognition that stories about second chances and hard-earned trust deserve to be celebrated. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson's Stories and turn on notifications, because every week we tell stories like this one. Stories about people who refuse to be defined by their worst moments. Stories about families built from nothing but courage and persistence. Drop a comment below telling me what you think about forgiveness and second chances. Your perspective matters. Your story matters. This community exists because we share our truths with each other and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone building their life alone. Someone wondering if trust is worth the risk. Someone who needs to believe that the best chapter of their story has not been written yet. Now let us see how Dorothy and Ryan's story concludes. The wedding was exactly what Dorothy had always wanted without knowing she wanted it. Small, intimate, surrounded by people who actually mattered, rather than people who would come for the spectacle. They held it in the mountains above Asheville, on a meadow that overlooked the peaks Dorothy had learned to call home. Wildflowers dotted the grass. String lights waited to illuminate the evening. 30 guests. Elena as maid of honor. The twins as ring bearers. Patricia, who had gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose, presiding over the ceremony. No Morales relatives. Ryan had cut ties with anyone who had served his father's legacy of control and manipulation. The people at their wedding were the people they had chosen, the family they had built. Dorothy wore a dress she found in a vintage shop. Ivory silk with simple lines. Nothing extravagant, just elegant and real, like the life she had constructed. You look like a fairy tale princess, Lucas said when he saw her, but the kind who also knows how to fight dragons. That is the best kind, Dorothy agreed. Gabriel examined her dress with architectural appreciation. The construction is excellent. The seams are well placed for optimal movement. Thank you, I think. It is a compliment. I know. I love you. I love you too. Now come on. We are going to be late, and being late to your own wedding is statistically associated with bad outcomes. What statistics are those? I made them up, but they sound convincing. Dorothy laughed and let her children lead her toward the meadow where Ryan was waiting. The ceremony was perfect in its imperfection. Patricia forgot part of the opening and had to check her notes. Lucas dropped his ring pillow and had to chase it across the meadow while guests laughed. Gabriel stood very straight and serious, determined to execute his duties flawlessly. And Ryan. Ryan stood under an arch of mountain laurel and cried without shame as he watched Dorothy walk toward him. She walked herself down the aisle. She had built this life alone. She would enter marriage on her own feet, choosing to share what she had created rather than being given away by someone else. The twins flanked her, one on each side. Her greatest accomplishments. The reason she had survived and built and eventually learned to trust again. When she reached Ryan, he took both her hands. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. You are crying. Happy tears. The best kind. Patricia began the ceremony. Words about love and commitment, and the choice to share your life with another person. Words about family, both the one you are born into and the one you create. Then it was time for vows. Ryan spoke first. 5 years ago, I left you with 7 words and broke everything we could have been. Today I am giving you a lifetime of words to make up for it. I promise to show up every day, even when it is hard, even when I fail, I promise to choose you and our children above everything else, above work, above comfort, above my own fears. I promise to keep earning your trust, because I know it was given as a gift, not a guarantee. And I promise to love you, imperfectly but completely, for the rest of my life. Dorothy's tears were falling freely now. Her turn. I spent 4 years convincing myself I did not need anyone. That needing was weakness, that I could do everything alone, and that was enough. You taught me that needing someone who shows up is not weakness. It is partnership. It is strength multiplied instead of divided. She squeezed his hands. I choose you today, not because of one night 5 years ago, but because of every day since you walked back into our lives and refused to leave. Because you proved yourself through actions, not words. Because you became the man I needed when you learned to stop being the man your father demanded. I trust you, finally, completely, forever. And I promise to keep choosing you, even on the days when choosing feels hard. Because that is what love is, not a feeling, a decision, made over and over until it becomes the foundation of everything. Patricia wiped her own eyes. By the power vested in me by an online ordination program in the state of North Carolina, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Ryan kissed her, not tentatively, not carefully, with the full force of 5 years of waiting and hoping and becoming worthy. The twins cheered. The guests applauded. The mountains stood witness to a promise that had been hard won and would be carefully kept. The reception was joy distilled into an evening, dancing on the meadow as the sun set, the twins running between guests with the unlimited energy of children at celebrations. Gabriel gave a speech that sounded like a legal brief. I conducted a thorough analysis of this situation over the past 18 months. I examined my father's consistency, his ability to follow through on commitments, and his treatment of my mother during both ordinary and stressful circumstances. My conclusion is that he is an acceptable candidate for marriage to my mother. He passed all my tests. I recommend approval of this union. The guests laughed. Ryan looked at his son with overwhelming pride. Lucas gave a speech that was considerably shorter. I love my family. Now can we have cake? More laughter. More joy. Elena toasted Dorothy. I have watched this woman survive things that would have destroyed most people. I have watched her build an empire while raising 2 children alone. I have watched her learn to trust again when every instinct told her to stay hidden. Ryan, you are marrying the strongest person I have ever known. Do not mess this up. She has an army of people who will make your life very unpleasant if you do. Patricia toasted them both. Dorothy came to me 5 years ago, pregnant and terrified and determined to survive. She did more than survive. She thrived. And now she is thriving with a partner instead of alone. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. That is knowing when to let someone help carry the weight. Ryan toasted his family. I wasted the first 40 years of my life chasing what my father wanted, building what he valued, becoming what he demanded, and all I got was emptiness dressed up as success. These past 2 years, learning to be a father, learning to be a partner, learning to be someone who shows up instead of someone who runs, that is the only achievement that matters. That is the only legacy worth leaving. He raised his glass. To my family, my real family, the one I chose and the one that chose me back. The evening ended with the twins asleep on Patricia's lap, and Dorothy and Ryan standing at the edge of the meadow looking at the stars. We did it, Ryan said quietly. We did. You married me. Apparently. Any regrets? Dorothy looked at him. At this man who had broken her heart and then spent years learning how to mend it. At the father of her children. At the partner she had never allowed herself to want until he proved himself impossible to refuse. Not one. They stood in silence, watching the stars, feeling the weight of the choice they had made and the life stretching out before them. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The years after were not perfect. No life is perfect. But they were good in ways that mattered. They kept both their professional lives and built a shared one. Dorothy's publishing consultancy continued to grow. Ryan's company evolved under leadership that valued sustainability over pure profit. The twins grew. Gabriel pursued architecture with single-minded determination, eventually attending a prestigious program that recognized what Dorothy and Ryan had always known. He had a gift for understanding how things held together. Lucas pursued environmental science. His gift for connection extended beyond people to the natural world. He wanted to protect the butterflies that had once landed on him like he was something sacred. They had challenges. Every family does. Arguments about parenting decisions, disagreements about priorities, the ordinary friction of people sharing space and time and life. But they faced everything together. That was the difference. Dorothy no longer carried the weight alone. And Ryan no longer ran when things got difficult. The twins graduated high school. Then college. They built lives of their own, returning home for holidays and random weekends when they missed the mountains and the family that had been built there. Gabriel married an architect he met in graduate school. Lucas married a marine biologist who shared his passion for preservation. Grandchildren arrived. Gabriel's first, then Lucas's. Small people who carried forward the legacy that had nothing to do with money or empire and everything to do with love. The Morales inheritance, the $150 million that had brought Dorothy and Ryan back together, was used for good. Gabriel funded sustainable architecture initiatives around the world. Lucas funded conservation projects that protected ecosystems across 3 continents. Ricardo Morales's money, earned through obsession with legacy, became a force for generational healing instead of generational trauma. Dorothy wrote a memoir in her 50s, Built from Nothing, a book about single motherhood and survival and the courage it takes to let someone help. It became a bestseller. She donated the proceeds to organizations supporting single parents building businesses while raising children alone. Ryan stepped back from corporate life entirely in his 60s. He spent his time teaching architecture concepts to his grandchildren and supporting the foundation he had started years ago. The one that helped single parents get the support Dorothy had never had. They grew old together, silver-haired and slower moving but still holding hands during evening walks. They still sat on the porch some nights, looking at the stars, marveling at the life they had built from one impossible night. "Remember when I was terrified to tell you they existed?" Dorothy asked one evening, decades after that first meeting in the Morales estate. "Remember when I thought I could never be a father?" Ryan replied, "When I was so broken I could not even imagine being this happy. We built something extraordinary from the worst moment of our lives. We built something real, and real is better than extraordinary." Dorothy leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his solidity, his presence that had never wavered in all the years since he came back. "I love you," she said. "Still, I love you too. Still, always." The story does not end there. Stories never truly end. They continue and evolve and face new challenges. But Dorothy and Ryan faced everything together, and that made all the difference. This brings us to the end of Dorothy and Ryan's journey. But before you go, I want to leave you with some thoughts about what this story means. Not just for them, for all of us. Dorothy spent 4 years believing that survival was enough, that keeping her head above water and protecting her children was the best she could hope for. She built walls so high that nothing could hurt her. But walls that keep pain out also keep joy in. Protection becomes isolation when we cannot tell the difference anymore. The lesson is not that we should tear down all our defenses. Some protection is necessary. Some caution is wisdom. But survival is not the same as living. And at some point, we have to choose whether we want to merely survive or whether we want to actually live. Ryan spent 4 years becoming someone different, not through words or promises or grand gestures, through the daily choice to show up, to be present, to do the work of transformation even when no one was watching. The lesson is not that everyone who hurts us will change. Most will not, but people can change, genuinely and permanently, if they are willing to do the hard work. The question is whether they are willing, and whether we can learn to recognize the difference between performance and transformation. The twins taught their parents something important, that love does not require perfect conditions, that family can be built from broken pieces, that children see more clearly than adults sometimes because they have not yet learned to overcomplicate the obvious. Gabriel and Lucas never wondered whether their parents loved them. They simply knew. And that certainty, that foundation of unconditional acceptance, gave them the security to become extraordinary people. The lesson is that children do not need perfection. They need presence. They need consistency. They need parents who show up and stay, even when showing up is hard. And forgiveness, the hardest lesson of all. Dorothy's forgiveness was not given freely. It was earned through 18 months of consistent action. It was granted in increments, each one requiring Ryan to prove himself again. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean pretending the hurt did not happen. It means choosing forward instead of backward, choosing possibility instead of resentment, choosing to let go of the weight of old pain so we have room to hold new joy. Ryan earned his forgiveness, but Dorothy gave herself freedom by choosing to stop carrying the burden of his betrayal. That is the final lesson. Forgiveness is not a gift we give to the person who hurt us. It is a gift we give to ourselves. If you have made it to the end of this story, it means something about Dorothy and Ryan's journey resonated with you. Maybe you have been Dorothy, building alone, protecting yourself, afraid to let anyone close enough to hurt you again. Maybe you have been Ryan, carrying the weight of past mistakes, hoping for a chance to prove you have changed, wondering if redemption is possible. Maybe you are somewhere in between, still figuring out what you believe about second chances and trust, and the hard work of building a life worth living. Wherever you are, I want you to know this. Your story is not over. The chapter you are in right now, however hard it might be, is not the ending. There are more pages, more possibilities, more chances to choose differently and build something better. Dorothy was 28 when she walked home alone in last night's dress with nothing but debt and a dying grandmother and a 7-word note that broke her heart. She was 33 when she faced the man who had abandoned her and told him the truth about the children he never knew existed. She was 34 when she let him prove himself. 35 when she admitted she loved him. 36 when she married him and chose to build a life together instead of apart. Her story had chapters she never could have imagined when she was at her lowest point. And so does yours. Hit that like button right now. Not for me. For you. For the acknowledgement that you made it through a story about hard things and found something worth celebrating. Subscribe to Mr. Dawson Stories because this is what we do here. We tell stories about people who refuse to give up, who build from nothing, who prove that the worst moment of our lives does not have to define the rest of it. Drop a comment telling me your own story, about survival, about second chances, about the hard work of learning to trust again. Your truth matters. Your voice matters. This community exists because we share our stories with each other and share this video with someone who needs it. Someone in the middle of their own impossible situation, someone wondering if it gets better, someone who needs to believe that they can build something extraordinary from the rubble of their worst moment. Because they can. You can. We all can. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this community we are building together. I will see you in the next story. Stay blessed. Dorothy stood on her porch in the final moments of this narrative, watching her grandchildren play in the yard she had bought when she had nothing, the yard where she had raised 2 boys alone, the yard where she had eventually let Ryan become part of the family she had built. The mountains rose behind them, ancient and indifferent and permanent in a way that human lives could never be. But human lives could be meaningful, could be beautiful, could be worth every struggle and setback and moment of despair that led to this. A hand slipped into hers, Ryan's hand, familiar and warm and present, the hand that had once given her a pocket square in a service corridor and then disappeared for 4 years, the hand that had spent decades proving it would never disappear again. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," she replied, "and nothing, and how grateful I am for all of it, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, because without them, I would not be standing here. I would not have learned what I was capable of. I would not have known how strong I could be. You would have been strong regardless. Maybe, but I would not have known it." The grandchildren ran toward them, demanding attention and snacks and the endless energy that came with being young and loved and certain of their place in the world. Dorothy gathered them up, fed them, loved them, sent them back to play with the promise of stories later. Stories about dragons and buildings and families that were not born, but built. Stories about a woman who survived the unthinkable and created something beautiful from the wreckage. Stories about a man who learned to stay instead of run. Stories about 2 children who grew up knowing they were wanted and became adults who made the world better. Stories worth telling. Lives worth living. A legacy worth leaving. That was the ending. Not a grand gesture or a dramatic conclusion. Just an ordinary evening in an ordinary house built by extraordinary love. Just a family. Imperfect and beautiful and exactly as it should be. Just life, the way it was always meant to be lived.